Welcome back. I am Dr. Kristen Casey, licensed clinical psychologist, here to answer your DMs about being a psychologist and the path that I took. So one of the comments that I got was, how did you manage to complete all of the coursework necessary? I'm overwhelmed thinking about all of the things that I'll have to do. So there's a bunch of different ways you can go about this, and everybody is so different, but I'll let you know my experience. So I had a tendency to get things done fairly quickly and early. So for me personally, I knew that having a deadline for anything in my life or being rushed is one of my triggers to become anxious, stressed, and upset. So for me, anything that was due, I would actually have it on my calendar due date for a week before. And I would just write it down and I wouldn't think about it again. And as far as I knew, it was due that day, right? But there was a little part of me that kind of had an inkling like, okay, I probably have a couple more days. But to me, knowing that there's like a deadline and that I'm not going to get it done, that drove me nuts. So I really just tried to manage my time as effectively as possible with deadlines, in addition to making sure that I had enough time throughout the week to complete things. So again, for me personally, this is different for everybody. But for me personally, I preferred to work on things for 1 to 2 hours a day, right? And space it out throughout the week so that I wasn't like spending 10 hours at one time doing coursework or homework or papers and things like that. I had colleagues who would literally set the entire day aside, get it all done in one day, and then have the rest of the week to themselves. I also had colleagues who would wait till the very last minute to do things. They got it done, but they worked better under pressure, right? So it just depends on how you work, and you have to go with the flow of how you work and not compare it to how other people work, because you're comparing apples to oranges. For example, if I compared myself to my colleague and said, oh my gosh, I need to get this all done in one day because then I'll have the rest of the week just like so-and-so does. Like this is the most effective way to do this. I would be setting myself up for failure because that's not how I operate. And it would probably make me very anxious to experience life that way in grad school. So that's the first way. So again, to recap, setting a deadline that was sooner than it actually was due. And then for me, spending a couple of hours per day doing it. Because for me, I knew, if I only have to spend 2 hours doing this, I'm just going to do it. And then I could do what I want. Because my attention span is not that long. Like I can't focus on something for that long. Another thing was, how do you manage the coursework in addition to the clinical work? So it's basically like having a job and going to school at the same time. So you're going to clinicals, meaning you're seeing patients for therapy, for assessments, all of that, while doing coursework, like having papers due. It's very overwhelming at first. It's really difficult to manage, but once you get into a groove, and like I said, you go with your body's natural flow of how you get things done, it will become very easy. Another thing to consider is that the school doesn't really want you to fail, right? Of course, they want to graduate people who deserve to graduate, but at the same time, they do have all of these programs in place to help you succeed. They have programs, tutoring programs, they have mentorship programs. You'll also have an academic advisor who could definitely help you with these things. And becoming friends with people in your class is probably the best way to do it. I had a couple of friends in grad school that we would just kind of vent to each other and talk about how stressed out we were. And it made us feel way less alone, because you'll notice that when you're in a graduate program and just say you have friends that aren't, it's just a different experience. Like they might not really totally understand where you're coming from when you say that you're stressed, whereas you might not understand where they're coming from if they have a really stressful job that maybe you've never done before. So going with your body's natural flow, important. There were times where I was so overwhelmed. My dog is... Okay, sorry about that. There were times where I was so overwhelmed where I did not think I was going to graduate. I thought like, wow, I'm not cut out for this. And like I mentioned and disclosed before, I was not a good student in high school. I was not a good student in my community college. I was not really the best student in my undergrad. I was not cut out for this. So my brother jokes and says that I made a whole 180 and he's kind of shocked that I became a doctor. And yeah, I am too. Because a lot of times it's thinking about the academic coursework, but your ability to complete coursework does not make you a good or bad psychologist. I mean, you have to know your stuff and you have to retain the information, but what really, really, truly matters is being able to take feedback, get things done when they're due, right? And then be a team player, be open to feedback, and be able to kind of be flexible, go with the flow, because all of those attributes are really, really prominent when you start practicing. You have to collaborate with other people. You have to get your notes in on time. You have to really take feedback from other people. When you get into internship and fellowship, if you decide to do a fellowship, a lot of it is constructive feedback. And sometimes it's difficult to handle all that feedback, but it makes you a better psychologist, makes you a better practitioner. So you might not really be good at getting papers done. You might not be really good at, memorizing things and all of that. You have to pass and you have to try to do the best job that you can. B's get degrees. You don't have to get straight A's, but at the same time, there are certain attributes that you need. So if you know that you have those, you might be cut out for it. But if you're really not the best student, it's totally okay too. There are things in place that can help you through. So I say that because I just didn't think it was possible for me. I just thought, wow, how am I going to get through this? And I managed to get through it in a really decent time. And I passed my dissertation like fairly quickly, which was kind of a shock to other people too. So hope that answered your question. Here to answer any more DMs that you have. Thanks.